Hey, come on, walk with me. I've got something to share with you. If you've ever been on a busy highway or a busy road, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's pretty much everybody. All of us have been on busy highways and roads. And you know what? They're getting busier. There's more of us. And, you know, we need more stuff. In fact, I mean, all our food and our clothing and our favorite electronics, they all get to us really transported by roads. I mean, sure, they come by planes and trains and boats, but eventually they end up on roads. So there's more of us and there's more stuff moving, and what that results in is busier traffic on our highways. Now, one of the things that's different about highway traffic from city traffic is that we tend to get all bunched up in groups. It's a kind of a neat phenomenon, actually, and we've all experienced this. You know, when you're driving in the summertime and you're stuck on the highway between slow camper or a motorhome, or you're going up a big hill and you're behind a big heavy transport and he's trying to get up the hill and you can't get past. And we all tend to bunch up into these things called platoons, these groups. And really what that is a cumulative effect of too much traffic volume. Now, in of itself, I guess it's not a real big deal, but it turns out that the effect on us can be a really significant issue. And it relates to our safety. So just think about it. When you're stuck in one of those platoons and you're going slower than you want to go, it means that you're at risk of being late where you want to go. And most of us have busy schedules. We've got tight timelines and we don't want to be late. If we're making a delivery of goods, we've got a schedule to keep. We can't afford to be late. So what can happen is we can take an unreasonable risk. We can maybe choose to pass on a solid line or maybe on a curve. Or, you know, if you're trying to get past that group and there's, say, 10 vehicles in that group, you've got to really punch it. You're going to be ending up going way too fast, way faster than you ever wanted to, then maybe faster than is safe. And when you're doing it on a 2-lane highway like the one behind me, it means that you're passing into oncoming traffic, and so the risk of a head-on collision is elevated substantially. So the engineering solution to that is to divide the highway and add more lanes, create basically more capacity for the vehicles and reduce the platooning and the annoying parts of traffic, and also the parts that create unsafe conditions. But what's interesting is that there's a sort of an unintended consequence that we don't often think about when we twin a highway. Yes, we're going to relieve the traffic. In fact, that's the engineering idea. Twinning it means we go from these platoon groups down to even flow traffic. Now, I'm standing here beside a portion of the Trans-Canada Highway that's still just 2 lanes. Right now, about 9,000 vehicles a day, especially in the summer, are going on this road. And forecasts are that very soon that traffic is going to double. So clearly, from a safety perspective, we need to be twinning this highway. But if you think about the traffic flow, and one of the major risks that come with it is the movement of wildlife back and forth. So I'm just going to turn around here for a second. And you can see there's a bunch of trees. I know the sun is sort of on us, but there's a bunch of trees here, and there's actually a river right behind me and a bridge. And this is a major corridor for wildlife to move back and forth. If you're an ungulate, if you're an elk standing here, you want to get across there, this road is never going to be a good thing for you. But what's interesting is that when we have just a 2-lane highway and we get into these platoon groups, there's actually gaps. So if you sort of follow the traffic behind me, or you just think about your own experiences, we get into these groups and you have platoons, you also have gaps. And so those gaps actually create opportunities for wildlife to move back and forth across a highway safely without colliding with us. Now, when we twin the highway, separate it, add a couple extra lanes, and create free flow traffic, we make it almost a permanent, unpenetrable barrier, because what happens is the traffic spreads out and there are no gaps. And on a busy highway like this one, or a big interstate highway, that's a 24-hour-a-day phenomenon, because a lot of the truck transport traffic goes at night to avoid the local car traffic. It's a lot easier. So we have this traffic going 24 hours a day and kind of impenetrable. Now, wildlife are still, they've got their reasons. They're going to try to get from here to over there, and they're going to take bigger chances. Now, when we collide with wildlife, that's not good with us. Everybody knows that, running into a moose or a deer or an elk, that's bad news, not only for the wildlife, but also for us. Or even if you're not colliding with them, but have you ever, hammered on the brakes and swerved wildly to avoid a rabbit or a coyote or some animal that's darting across? It can be quite dangerous. If you add in the factor of winter, it can really get quite horrendous. So there is an answer to reducing that unintended consequence, but it does take some planning, and it does take a little extra money when we're thinking about planning the upgrades to our highways. If you take a look at the case studies in Banff National Park in Alberta, Canada, they've built really large wildlife overpasses, quite a few of them, and combined that with fencing. And it's turned out to be extremely effective. In fact, it's so effective that elk have actually been tracked moving into the park and walking maybe as far as 60 kilometers just to go across that overpass, rather than chance it trying to get across a divided freeway. And so it's very, very effective. It is a little bit more expensive, but when you combine those very large overpasses with fencing, we can control the movement of animals back and forth across our major highway corridors, keeping us safe and keeping the animals safer. Now, in some cases, for example in British Columbia, we've tried some smaller crossings, and they're narrow, like maybe there's a few around Golden, British Columbia that I can think of that are only a couple of meters wide, and the animals aren't using them, because if you're a prey species, the last thing you want to do really is get into a tiny little corridor and you've got predators waiting on either end for you. So they tend not to use them. They have to be big enough and wide enough. The ones in Banff are so big that they even have trees planted on them, so they get visual cover, and it's a lot safer. So if you're involved in a highway upgrade planning project, I definitely encourage you to take a look at those and the success that they're having, and think about how to incorporate that, especially on major wildlife corridors where the wildlife are moving back and forth between two different kinds of habitat a lot. And if you're a citizen and those upgrades are happening in your community, like they are here, get involved. Talk to the engineers. Find out what their plans are to mitigate this unintended consequence, so we can keep both wildlife and us a lot safer as we continue to increase the amount of traffic moving through our highways. Now, if you're watching this on Facebook, hit like so you can walk with me again next week. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe and you'll get a notification. Please leave me a comment here and let me know if you've experienced this platooning effect, if you've seen other measures besides those kind of crossings I'm talking about that are very effective for reducing risk for both people and wildlife. Love to hear about it. Please leave your note and let's share and talk about this. Until next week, have a great and super weekend.